I call the meeting to order. And this is a hybrid meeting.
Hold on, sorry. Okay, good.
This is a hybrid meeting and the agenda's been posted on our website. So first order of business. Margot Jones present. Thank you. And we also have staff here.
Oh, Erin Ann Hall.
And you can see,
Doug Mayo there.
is Doug here? No. We hope he's,
Doug is there.
he is there? And Mayo. Okay, great.
But
Hi, Doug.
hearing from me though.
Can you say hello? Doug? Okay, well,
For the record, I am recording the meeting as well, just on my computer.
oh,
No,
okay.
just for the
So
record.
that, and it's being recorded correctly, correct?
Yes, yep.
Yes, and anyone else who might be recording needs to let us know if they are. No, okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the December 5th meeting minutes.
So moved.
All those in favor?
In favor.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. And I'll also entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the public hearing of January 2nd,
So moved.
which we circulated online and I believe on the Google Drive. For the
I
historic
can't
commission.
access the historic drive yet.
You
I can't put stuff on it yet.
Oh, we ought to fix that. Yeah.
It's being worked on.
Okay.
Yeah, Eric said he's working on it with IT, but. that's-
Oh, did I hear a second?
I second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Terrific. And thank you, Sarah, very much for the detailed minutes. Those
Yes.
were,
Very nice.
It was a lot.
let us know when you write your first novel. But you won't have time if you
I wanted to do.
document us like you are. Okay, so first item under old business is a report about the final disposition of the survey and planning grant that was done by Brian Knight. And Brian was trying to attend. Athena, do you know if he's going to make it? She's on mute. What I
He's
said-
supposed to be, I haven't heard that he's not, but he said 5:30, I think, didn't he, Margot?
Okay, so
Yeah.
with the consent of the group, or a sense of the motion, may I move this to when he shows up?
Yeah,
All in
you
favor?
can just
Yeah.
change the
Okay.
order. That's no problem.
Great.
That
Anytime
would
you-
be awesome, and Matthew will be on to run the slides.
Yep, I have it
Terrific.
all set up.
Yeah, good. Hey, Matt,
Hello.
and I'll take notes.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Perfect.
thanks, everybody.
Okay, so the next item of business was Community Preservation Committee. Sarah's going to give us an update.
So we actually didn't have too much to update. The CRC came in and updated us on their the project to redo the windows in the building, and they're hoping to get rolling on that. And it's
That's the
Thursday.
The old courthouse.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, the old courthouse. And then the other one was the barn. We had talked about the whitewashing at the fairgrounds. So they are not going through with that because it was way more expensive to have it actually done and correctly, like whitewashed in the historic fashion. So they found a vendor and they're going through and they're actually going to initiate the next steps with that as well. So other than that, we're starting to review projects and we're getting on a roll. We have one more historic project to review, and I think it's going to be next week. We're doing that. So theoretically, in February, we'll have a little bit more information, and I can give everybody copies of their full applications and all that as well, if you guys want to have access to that.
Well, it's on the website, right?
Yes, yeah, but
Yeah.
just in case anybody wants like physical copies, I'm very happy to print that stuff out.
for the fairgrounds, can I just clarify, in the initial application that we saw said there were no lime washers, and so they were gonna do this other thing that's not quite as historic.
It's not
but
quite as
it's-
historic,
But
no.
then, and I know I connected them with a lime washer, so it sounds like they connected with that person, but it's too expensive, so they're sticking with.
Yeah, and they said it was
what
about
in the
10
original.
times the cost.
Oh,
Yeah, so they were like, so not only was it 10 times the cost, but it would last 10 times as less. It wouldn't last as long, it wouldn't preserve as well into the future, so ultimately, the process that they're going forward with was deemed to be the best for what they, the money that they have and the services that they're, going to use and all that. So, but yeah, I did actually ask if they had talked to you, and they were like, yeah, we did it, it was awesome, and,
Yeah, yeah, I
it
mentioned-
just didn't work out.
Yeah, okay,
Good, but yes.
good
so I
to
did-
know what happened.
Yeah, and so we have, like I said, we have one more project to review, and then we will go from there, but deliberations are expected to last until at least March, and then so as far as funding, that'll be a little bit farther out.
Do all the historic projects have a letter of recommendation from us?
I believe there are at least two that do.
Yeah,
I have not read all the applications thoroughly yet, but if not, I will let you know, and we can contact them and reach out, because it's might as well at this point. The more documentation they have, the better,
and then we wrote in favor of the libraries project.
Yes,
Yes.
yep,
And the CRCs.
yes, I actually was looking at that earlier today.
Yeah, so if anybody else,
I think there's only 3 applications for the historic. And I believe there's only one left, which is the library, and yeah, so
would it
theoretically,
be the town hall documents, that one? Or did that get,
I think that was last
That
year.
was last year's and it didn't come back. Okay, yeah.
That.
yeah, this one is part of the library is looking to digitize some of their documents for the Greenfield room. And that one has not been presented yet.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Sarah. We look forward to hearing from you again in February. So the next item of old business is the YMCA discussion of the demolition delay that we passed last 2 weeks ago. There's been some new information, and I'll invite Grady to speak to present that. Yeah, sure. Come on right up.
Thank you for having me this evening. I appreciate it. At the end of the meeting on the 2nd, I think I had mentioned that we had one more, I think our 8th museum/historic commission group coming by to visit the church. And the hopes were that the Barry Historic Commission and the Barry Historic Society were bringing along a local businessman who had an interest in perhaps bringing the church back to Barry where it originated. And I think most of its history lays. A gentleman by the name of Phil Stevens, the owner of the Carter and Stevens Farm LLC in Barry. And I did share with both you and with Aaron a package that I put together. I have, assuming that you had shared that with the other members of the committee, so I won't get into all the details unless you want them to. But Mr. Stevens and his family have decided they would like to dismantle the church and bring it back to Barry, where they will rebuild it. It would actually be their 10th rebuilding project they've done. They've done 5 historic buildings, and this would be the 6th historic building, along with 4 other buildings that they've dismantled and rebuilt on their commercial farm property. And the really cool thing is that the whole catalyst for this was a combination of the Barry Historic Society, their president and their secretary, and then the historian for the society, who's also the chairman of the Barry Historic Commission, all came on that visit. So they were kind of the catalyst that brought us all together. And Mr. Stevens took, he and his family came. It's a family operation. He's the 4th generation of Stevens who run the farm. And the 5th is his children, who are all engaged as well. And he decided that this was a project worthy of taking on and bringing it back to Barry. And I listed all the things that he would like to bring back, anything of historical nature, the framework of the church. It will be rebuilt on his commercial farm property in Barry. It'll be part of his commercial farm operation. It'll be a building that'll be open to public. Exact use, he was not ready to tell me what that would be, but it'll be some aspect of the farm. And he did indicate that they would put historic signage up to make sure that they documented the building's history, et cetera. And I guess the most important thing of all I just want to share is in addition to having, this would be his 10th rebuilding, 5 of which are historic buildings. I spoke to him again this morning and got some more information, and I was like, tell me about your family's history. And 5th generation is on the farm now. He is also, and I did not realize this, Phil is a board member of the Mount Grace Land Conservation Trust in Athol. And his mom and dad have been passed, and one is currently a board member of the Barry Historical Commission. So there is a predilection towards preserving history and being aware and proud of history. And then I spoke to Bob Bentley this morning, president of the Barry Historical Society, Kay Flick, secretary of the Barry Historical Society, and Lucy Allen, who was a historian for the Barry Historical Society and president of the Barry Historical Commission, just to reinforce that, yeah, you brought Phil over and you were the catalyst, but how do you guys feel about this? And I will paraphrase Kay Flick, who I spoke with. She goes, Grady, as you're telling me the news, I'm getting tingly all over. This is really exciting. I talked to Bob Bentley, the president, and he was equally excited, thought it was great news. And then I talked to Lucy Allen, who I had shared some of her historical research back on the 2nd. And she also is extraordinarily excited about the church coming back to Barry. They are very comfortable and very excited to have it on the farm property. Because that was one thing that I was a little bit worried about, was this is not going to go back to the original site. But they're like, this is perfect. This will be open to the public. It'll be heavily traveled along with the other historic properties they have there. So just really exciting to hear. And I guess in closing, we've been on a long and winding path between us. And you guys have been very open-minded, and I appreciate that. I've respected the work that you do. And I just want to say in advance of a vote that I hope you'll take this evening, I just would like to say Bob and Kay and Lucy and all of us at the Y are very, very flattered that and pleased that you would consider this compromise, which preserves history. It takes the building out of Greenfield, obviously, but it puts it back where I think that rightful history should be preserved and honored. And I just want to say in advance, thank you for the consideration.
Now, this farm is an agro-tourism business. He's got a brewery there, sells milk, sells beef, sells a bunch of stuff, but he also has regular events there and so forth.
He does, yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's research on the farm, because I was interested in.
I mean, like, what are you going to use it for? And he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know yet. He tossed out.
He's not going to make a pig farm out of it.
No, it's just for people to visit, families to visit.
Okay,
I
good.
mean, he talked about, we want to put a petting zoo in for children. I'm like, well, I don't know if that's what the church would be used for, but that's not final. But we even talked about a museum of sorts, which I think we'd all love to see. But bottom line, it's going to be used, it's going to be preserved, it's going to be respected, and people will be spending time in it, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah.
He's quite a guy. I've learned a lot about him, as have you. And one of the things that I was really concerned about was, is he just doing this because he can, and it's just like a cheap building for him? And having done the research with the commission and the society in Barry, talking to them about their belief in what man's doing, and then looking at his background, there's a big influence of conservation and history, which kind of for me sealed the deal. Like, this is going to be a good home for this building.
And that was the purpose of delaying the demolition.
Yeah.
To give you an opportunity to find a way to save it. And wow.
And somebody up
Only
top,
for 2 days or 1 day.
somebody from on top smiled down on all of us, and I'm forever grateful.
I know.
I'd like to tell you it was all my sophisticated hard work, but quite frankly, I'll take the credit for that. But it was some folks on the outside that we'd engaged that were like, let's find a way to make this work. And there's a whole bunch of people got together, and now we have a ways to go.
Mhm.
So I don't want to say this is a done deal. we've got some work on our end to do with getting rid of, the hazmat materials. We've got to, Tina Newton's hard at work. We've got two building permits, two demo permits now to take the church down and rebuild it then for the balance of the property. And so there's some other things going on as well. We're trying to renegotiate a price with our original company. Because one of the things I said from the beginning is that not only do we want to preserve history, but that, and it's a little bit out of my call, but I'm going to go to my finance committee next week and hopefully be able to provide a donation to Phil to help with the process of getting this thing taken apart and moved back. I kind of like that's our gift to Barry for what they're doing and what Phil is doing.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah,
Wait till the board says yes, but
right.
Well, it's the whole thing. As you know, in some, the whole thing is just like mind boggling.
Yeah.
What are the odds that Barry would go and save the day, especially where that's the origination of the church. It's just like, it's almost too good to be true.
work out one, right?
Yeah, right.
I sort of feel the same way.
Any other discussion? Yeah.
I'll just make comments. As someone who's worked in preservation for, a number of years, I always love when we can, save buildings on site. But that said, I think it's very rare to find situations where, especially small town historical societies are not always known for their vast amounts of resources. And I was not holding out hope for that solution. But it's very rare for something like this, I think, to happen in the way that it has. I think it's a really great solution in the end to be able to, obviously sad to lose it in Greenfield, but to take it back to where it was initially with a steward who seems to understand the value of the site. Moving buildings is not always easy. Finding someone to move them, I think I commend the Y for what I think was a really great effort to find someone to do this. Just again, in my experience, finding takers for buildings like this is rare, and so it's really, I think, a minor miracle. But in preservation, I think in the end is about, we make compromises and adaptive reuses. I think are great solutions for buildings to be able to contribute in viable new ways that meet people's needs today. I have questions about how we kind of go forward in a way that ensures that, that if the demolition delay is lifted, like that this happens, and what happens once the building is disassembled, like it is gone from Greenfield. So how do we kind of manage those logistics to make sure that this actually, to give us some reasonable, I guess a guarantee maybe is impossible, but to find out how we get as close as possible to, we want to make sure this will actually happen, because once it's gone, it's not going back up here. So those are but all that to say, I think it's a great solution. I'd love to see it happen.
Well, I had some of those same questions myself. That's why I spent a lot of time talking with Phil and getting some references. And they have unhesitatingly said as many references you want from the other building we've taken down and put back up. I did in the package I sent, there were several photographs of buildings that they were reassembling in various stages. And I think a couple that were already completely reassembled. So he has a track record. He loves Barry. His family's been there since 1938, I think he told me. And when he visited, was not just he, but it was also his two daughters, his son-in-law, and they're going to be the team that has taken down 9 before, and this will be the 10th. And also, we are working on a very simple contract that holds him accountable and holds us accountable on our end of things. So, and that's certainly not fail-safe, but he was like, makes sense, let's do that. And I said, have you ever had this before? He goes, no, it's always been a handshake. And I said, well, I'm a Vermonter and I believe in handshakes, but I think my board would probably appreciate a little bit more structure. And I'm going to take a wild guess that maybe the Greenfield Historic Commission would also like a little bit something more concrete. And he's like, write it up and I'll take a look at it. And
so we would need a motion to rescind. Is that correct? So we need a motion to rescind the delay, the initiation of the delay. Is that what we're going to rescind? What's the wording?
You're,
A motion to rescind the vote on the demolition delay from the date, which was the second. And if you want to attach a contingency, you can attach it there, contingent on this being.
Receiving the written agreement.
Yeah,
Written. So.
okay, so we wouldn't rescind our designation of the building as a preferably preserved building. We would simply uninvoke the demolition delay.
That's
Yeah.
right. We send it.
Revoke. We would revoke the delay.
But on contingent on getting the document that you were talking about, right? That we would, you want us to write a document for you to sign? Is that what you said, or?
No, I'm working directly with Cotter and Stevens Farm LLC to write a simple document.
Okay,
Both he and I will sign.
okay.
I'm
That's,
not looking for anything from you, just looking for a vote to.
so we would just want to see that, but we wouldn't be
Yeah.
a signatory to it, right?
Right,
Okay,
we would,
yeah, we just want to see it. So contingent on receiving that letter or the contract, whatever, however you want to describe it, that we would rescind our invocation of the delay of the demolition delay. Is that the right wording?
And just to be clear, so it sounds like probably back to my initial question, the closest that we can get to a guarantee, which I realize is impossible, is a contract between the Y and the mover.
Well, if
That's-
we see that piece of paper,
Mhm.
that it's contingent on seeing that piece of paper. That's the best we can do, really.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Sarah, do you have a sense of the motion?
Yeah, I can totally, I'll piece it together.
Okay.
Good. I couldn't.
I will.
So, having the motion on the table, I'd like to open it up to further discussion. And with your
We need a
permission.
second.
Yeah, we need a second. Thank you.
Second.
Jeremy, second.
Yeah.
Great. And with your permission or understanding, I understand there's some members from the public here tonight who may wish to comment. And possibly those on the Zoom call as well. So let's see, raise your hands here if you want to comment.
You had a couple of people come in who aren't on this list.
Yeah, could you sign in,
Anybody who
Patty?
came in who didn't sign that list, if you could put them down for our record.
So we have two in person and then we'll go to who's on the Zoom call. Is anybody, can you raise your hand if you want to speak to this motion? Doesn't look like anybody does. Okay,
Doug does.
who does?
Doug Mayo.
Oh, okay, Doug. All right. I was looking for, a
Recognize Doug first since he's a member.
yes, yeah, I waved at him, but Doug's
Doug,
here.
can you unmute, please.
Do you want to declare that you're here, Doug?
He's working on muting himself right now.
He's working on it. Okay.
You can see,
Okay.
there you go.
Yeah, very good.
I just want to double or basically ditto what Jeremy had said, and I think this is really good for the Y and really good in my opinion, we're the historical commission, and our mission is to save historical buildings or other things, and I think it fits right in with what we want to do, what we're trying to do for both Greenfield, and now we can make it happen for wherever the Y is going. That's the first I've heard of it actually moving away, but that's still in my wheelhouse or in our wheelhouse in terms of what we do with historical things. And I'm just so glad that it's going to be restored. It's won't be in the same location, but that's okay. But I'm in favor of the motion. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Doug. And I understand, Stephanie, you do want to speak, but first I'm going to go to the people in the room. Yes?
Yes, Rebecca Todd. One suggestion to Jeremy's point about a guarantee and a possible friendly amendment to your motion. You suggested that you would see the document. I might suggest that the commission would review the document and make the rescission of your decision contingent on approval of the document.
Yeah, that's what the motion said.
Yeah.
It did say contingent on, yeah,
Thank you.
I will work my magic.
yeah. Work your magic, good.
And Patty?
Oh, you probably don't want me to read the whole thing.
No, I'd like you to keep it to 3 minutes, possibly.
Well, that's less than 3 minutes, but no.
Okay,
And I sent to Eric, I don't know if you got the letters, the other letters. Several other people submitted letters about the same topic. And that is that, and I'll just try to.
could you speak up?
Oh,
Yeah.
Stand here.
Yeah, he would like me. Use the microphone if you can.
Oh,
Oh, do we have a microphone? Okay.
Susan can pick you up. Thank you.
Just talking to the book.
Thanks, Patty.
I hate being on TV too. So.
We're all watching.
Of course, as a advocate for historic preservation, I'm thrilled that this building will go back to its origin on Berry. But with that said, I think the opposition to it at the previous meeting was that it would remove it from our historic district and leave open space in our historic district. And the conversation, I think, now turns toward the fact that our demolition delay bylaw has no provision for removal of a building. And the demolition bylaw has no provision for removal of the building. So removing it is not covered under this. And what the removal of it does is the same as demolition, because it will be gone. So a thought that many of us have had and have talked about and would like to propose is that the back of that building, which is not being moved to Berry, which is the carriage house, that during this interim period while the negotiations are ongoing for a contract to remove the building and to ensure that that happens in accordance with everyone's wishes, that there be an opportunity to look at the carriage house as, also as a preservation object, because it is the Haggis carriage house, and that represents a figure in Greenfield history that's a very important figure. I don't know if some of you new people know about the people, the Washburn and Haggis figures in Greenfield, but they are important people, and I can just sort of summarize, but that carriage house is the last piece of the representation of the Haggis family on Main Street. And so we thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if that carriage house can be, relocated and preserved as well? And there are a number of different scenarios that could make that possible, but just that if the lifting of the demolition order is contingent upon the removal, the contract for the removal during that period, that would be a good time to explore opportunities for preserving that building, which is extremely charming, and is actually original to Greenfield and is the last representation of what those two properties once were. The Y property, I think you wrote a interesting.
Washburn family.
Yeah.
They're Washburns.
Yeah, you've written about both of them. And so it's just a way to sort of remediate the damage that is done when we remove something from our historic district, which is suffering, in these recent years from things happening. And so, I've written my letter, which I think Eric maybe forwards to all of you. We couldn't figure out how to communicate because there's no email addresses on the city website. So I know that Tom Bledsoe has written a letter, as has Mitch Anthony and Sandy Thomas. So we've all sort of written about this and would like some consideration on that notion of lifting the order maybe on that
front section, but that giving the back building an opportunity for the same preservation and restoration.
Yeah,
My
that's
time
3
is up.
minutes, right?
Oh, was that 3?
Yeah.
Gosh, I would like to have made it 30 seconds and then get out of here, but anyway, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other folks in the audience to speak? No? Okay, I understand, Stephanie, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie Duclos, Chapman Street, Greenfield. I love the idea that the church is going to be preserved in some capacity. I would have hated to see it demolished downtown. I fully support the historical preservation of our district. I would love to see something similar in design, if, you know, aesthetically pleasing, with the preservation of the carriage house, as once noted by the previous speaker. Just because we are losing something that is so beautiful, even though it can't physically be used at this moment because of, you know, safety concerns. But if you stand out there at night and you just look at the light shining on it, it is a beautiful building. And hopefully on a redesign, if a relocation does happen, that we could, you know, kind of preserve even our skyline. I'd love to see that happen. I know it might be a crazy design feature, but we are losing something by losing that building, not just, you know, the historical significance, but the beauty of the building itself in our downtown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other people would like to speak? Hearing none, I think we should bring this to a vote. Could you restate the motion? Sarah.
I'm just gonna do it on the computer.
Tim.
I had time to think about it.
Okay.
Who
All
was-
right, what the motion is to rescind the invocation of the demolition delay ordinance, contingent on us being able to peruse the document,
To review and accept.
review and accept. There you
Yeah.
go. See, I know you knew.
I help.
Yeah. Review and accept the document that is being signed between the YMCA and the gentleman there, Phil Stevens.
Okay, any further discussion?
Got a problem with that, buddy?
I guess as a matter of procedure, I'm curious, I think interesting points were raised by speakers. Is this the time to have conversation about that, or would that be after?
I don't wish to alter the motion.
Yeah.
So motion stands as, unless somebody wants to amend it.
I can point out that the National Register form for the church does not mention, I mean, it has one sentence under historic significance about
Carriage house.
the carriage house. And the
And-
National Register district doesn't mention it.
Yeah. And our people have looked at it and said that it was not in very good condition.
Right.
So, for what that's worth.
Can I understand, clarifying question, I guess the plan, I mean, the implication of this vote based on the plans that the YMCA has would be the church goes to bury the carriage house and the connector building are demolished.
Right.
He is planning on salvaging the carriage house cupola. In addition, Mr. Stevens will salvage any or all of the following if they have historical significance: carriage house cupola, interior wainscoting, internal doors, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, so my question would be now the demolition permit that we received, that we had a public hearing about on January 2nd, involves the demolition and just like pretty much almost total disposal of the building materials. Now this new plan to deconstruct the church and reconstruct it somewhere else, would that require a new demolition permit? Since the plan is kind of
Yes.
Yes,
changed?
and then-
Yeah.
We've actually
Yeah.
submitted that, and we're in the process of it.
Okay,
That would require a new one, yes.
yeah, okay,
And it would specifically say that the carriage house would be demolished, but that the church would be moved.
okay,
So that would be in the new permit.
yeah, so.
And I believe, Grady, didn't you say that they looked at the carriage house and it's not in good shape, but they are preserving the cupola, right?
Yeah. We had also had people look at it.
Corroborates
So the same building.
It's
Yeah, I know it's bad.
It's way better.
Yes.
Well, okay, well, well, now the way I see it, since the original demolition permit is kind of just gonna get torn up and tossed out, I mean, that would kind of make our delay null and void anyways, because like you would apply for a new permit for this dismantling and relocation of the building, and
Well, I think the delay.
I
we have
think
to stop.
Yeah.
yeah, but I think technically we would, it's like, it's a completely different permit now. isn't it?
No, I think
No,
the spirit of the
no.
law or the ordinance is that.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a
Triggered
timetable
Yeah.
involved here as
That's
well.
the one point I wanted to make is that
Yeah,
if you wait till next month to
Yeah, we can't do
extend
that.
it.
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
farm is
do it
gonna
now.
work out.
Okay, yeah, oh, yeah, no, I mean, I'm
Time
not saying I have a problem with it, but just like kind of like as like maybe more of a clarification thing for me, because I mean, like I said, I mean, if it, like this, I wasn't sure if it was, okay, so I guess what you're saying is that the delay is tied to the building and not to the permit.
That's right.
correct, right. So given that we have really quite an agenda tonight, I'd like to move this to a vote. All those in favor of the motion,
I,
say aye. Doug raises his hand as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Any opposed? Seeing none? The motion passes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
So may I ask if, when I get this contract, this simple one-page contract, will you be able to look at it and get back to me virtually?
Yes.
If
Yep.
we wait one,
Oh, no, well, this is a delayed meeting. We actually have a meeting February 6th, I think it is, the first Thursday in February. But I think,
I would like, I mean, it would be
Yeah.
helpful, sooner we can get. I
Get
can
reviewed.
get him
Yeah.
committed to it.
It's not a problem with open meeting, is it? No. Not a
It's been
problem with
discussed
open meeting.
probably.
if what,
It's not a problem with open meeting.
No,
to do that.
because it's
Yeah.
been discussed and
Okay.
you guys have the authority.
Yeah, and it's.
So I can
Right.
distribute it. Yep,
Okay.
Okay.
Takes care of that.
Have that written by tomorrow, but it'll probably be Monday, Tuesday, and I'm sure he'll get it. We're gonna work back and forth on it, and then I'll get it to you, so she signs it.
Okay, thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Grady.
Yeah. Yes,
There's a question on I have some concern that we received letters from the public that we didn't see or have an opportunity to, I mean, we voted and that's good, but as someone I know who was on the side of writing these letters lots of time.
But that is being worked on to have, as I understand from what you've been saying, the town has been working on a way for us to get, to have an
repository.
entry
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
for correspondence and so forth, which we don't have at this point. And prior to that, it was passed on to us, to the chair. But now we'd like to have a direct thing, but that is being worked on.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's really
We should
important
have
if the public writes letters to us, to
Email. Yeah.
get those letters and have an opportunity to
Yeah.
read them and understand their content before
Right,
we vote, so that we can hear from the public and
right.
consider to have time to consider those things.
Right.
Before, so.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Good point.
Okay, well, I see Brian Knight in the audience, our esteemed consultant. All the way from Vermont.
I do want to make sure that there is another meeting in here at 6:30, so
Yeah, we're.
Yeah,
working-
we're gonna keep moving along. Yep.
you guys are doing great.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Connecticut River.
So you're not ready for my 40 slides.
Can you guys see the slideshow okay?
Oh, yeah, look at that. That's working. Hi.
Yeah.
How do I make it move?
You
I
just
press
say next slide and
Next slide?
there's a magic person behind.
Okay,
the
okay,
screen.
don't say that. Okay.
But first
Hi.
of all, do we need to introduce you or
I'm Brian Knight.
Brian's been our consultant on this historic survey and planning grant update for a year and a half or
Yeah, a year and a
something like
half.
that. He's from Vermont and he's done an amazing job, so.
And I would say I've been using the old survey extensively for years. And your version is really well done.
Thank you. There's some
Even if
good-
I did
there's
half
some
of
good
them.
groundwork.
That's okay.
A lot of time, a lot of times you're correcting massive falsitudes, even if that's not a word. Not in this case, though.
Well,
Have to read.
because I was coached by Peter
Writing
Miller.
anymore.
So
Anyway, so-
I will, just as a sort of a preamble to this, I am not going to glean over a lot of actual history because there's a lot of it. And I don't feel like I need to sort of repeat it to this group because you're very familiar with the industrial history of the town and all the personages and stuff. So I'm not going to get too involved in that. So next slide, please. The magic person. So I was hired to do an update of the survey, and these are what the surveys looks like from this one. It was from 1984. Majority of them were done in the 1980s. There were some done periodically between 1984 and the present due to sort of like individual projects. Maybe there was like some kind of environmental review project or a tax credit project or something triggers MHC to demand another form. But the majority of the forms were done in the 1980s, some even earlier. Tend to be two-page documents with the historic photo or the photo, which is historic now, but at the time was, but still serve as an excellent resource. Next slide, please. So thanks to lots of technology, that's the same form. So it's gone from 2 pages to whatever that is. That's 14 pages. Much to do with just the availability of research. Ancestry.com and newspapers.com just have sort of blown up the availability of information in terms of sort of the written documentation aspects. And then in this case, you can see like there's a lot of blueprints that are available at an archive in Boston. Things like online Sanborn maps, historic postcards. Newspapers.com has access to not only the written articles, but ads and maybe like artist renditions of proposed buildings. So there's just a lot more information out there to enhance the product. To add to that, deed research in the state of Massachusetts is a wonderful thing because it's all online and it's easy to go from one owner to the next, unlike say up in Vermont where you have to go and pull out the books and do it. And it's very time consuming. So it's kind of fun to do it in Massachusetts. Next slide, please. So example of the newspapers that are available online, not only are they available online, but say 20 years ago, you actually had to read every single thing on that, but now you can do word searches and makes it a lot easier and a lot quicker. And you're not indexed. Yeah. So you're not sort of sitting behind a microfiche machine for days on end trying to get the information. Other availability, census data, that's marriage data, that's all online. So once again, you don't have to go into the town clerk's office, city clerk's office and find the information. Directories, which are fantastic in terms of determining who occupants were of buildings at good different periods of history and actual residents of buildings too. So great resources. Next slide, please. And then census data, which is great just for determining size of family who live there, what years, if they have borders. Also, their immigration history is also often highlighted there. So you get a sense of when they came to America, where they came from, their professions, where they worked. So just great amount of data available right there. So that's why it goes from 2 pages to 14 pages. It's just the amount of information. Next slide, please. So a lot of, one of the target areas was the National Register District. I've heard you talking about it just in this meeting alone. This using maps like 1858 map gives you building footprints and also owners. So just it's a great way to.
Washburn's up there, yeah.
Talking about. So it's a great way to do, so when you're going through the deeds and then you can sort of cross-reference with the names here. And most of the time they match up. Sometimes there's a tenant that's listed on the maps versus the actual owner, but more times than not, the owner of the house is the one written there. Next slide, please. Bird's eye view from 1877. Although a bird's eye view is a very artistic interpretation of a given city or town, they're pretty accurate. They're very, very reliable sources of information. Some people sort of poo-poo them because it's a bird's eye, and obviously didn't go up there and do it. But there's a lot of work went into these at the time, and I love them. So it's always nice to have a town. And then 1929 map, lots sort of just showing again property owners and just sort of showing the process. Next slide, please. Just some of the buildings that we focused on, the buildings that you're all familiar with. Next slide. Things that have changed since the National Register nomination is some buildings have gained historic significance since the nomination. These buildings, I can't do the math in my head right now. I can't remember if they're contributing or non-contributing. I imagine they were non-contributing.
Yeah.
So since 50 years being the threshold, these are buildings that are worthy of examination and perhaps merit as well. That sometimes reaches some contention. And also the area right here is an area focused in on as well. So just a general update. Next slide, please. And so we'll probably be flying through a lot of slides. Sanborn insurance maps, great sources, often great for showing the evolution of a building. I can't remember for Greenfield, but maybe there was 6 iterations of them from say the 1880s through 1948. So a great way to look at the additions on buildings and a great way to actually get dates on them. The Masonic Hall and several of the buildings do have blueprints on file at the Massachusetts Department of Building Inspections, all rolled up, and was able to retrieve those for probably like 6 or 7 of the properties here in town. Tend to be commercial or institutional buildings. They don't really have any for residences, but still very useful. And great to just get them to get them available, excuse me, to get them available to the public because they're sitting rolled up in some basement somewhere in Boston. And I think it's just great to be able to sort of get them somewhere where people can see them a little more easier because it is a bit of a process to gain access to them. It's just a sort of
That Masonic Hall, the Grand Meeting Hall upstairs is quite fancy. The blueprint you just showed with the sweeping staircases and the big thing was very, very fancy.
And I didn't go inside any building. Still there?
Yeah.
It's still there, but they chopped it up when they did the TV place up there. But nonetheless, you can still see the framework of it.
Some buildings didn't do because we lost some buildings. Next slide.
American House.
Ancient house.
Ancient, right.
And so another part of the goals, the objectives, one was the downtown here. Another one was the industrial sites in Greenfield. So I targeted several of those sites here on Sanderson Street, Power Court in the bottom right, and then Riddell Street, I believe, on the top right. And did history on the industries that were there and the various it's you definitely have to weave through the tap and die industry of who's owning what and.
Just changed,
In the paper today.
Yeah.
Did you see
changing
that?
today, yeah.
All right, so
Closing
the-
down.
add another chapter to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But it gets a little bit complicated in trying to figure out where's where. Next slide, please. Some other of the industrial buildings, Hope Street, Tolentine Building, Olive Street, the bottom left is Chapman Street, and Pierce Street, which is a fantastic building. Here's Hope Street. Some buildings change. The building pictured there is a lot different than the building you see there. So once again, you can use something like the bird's eye to see that. Like the bird's eye is like 1877, and then you could look at say a 1901 Sanborn and see that the footprint's totally different. Helps you sort of nail down the date of the changes. Not to mention that these changes for these mills were pretty well documented in the newspapers, were big events with sort of massive front page stories. Next slide, please. And then streets escaping me right now where I am, but Mead Street, thank you.
He's the
Yes.
owner.
I did that on purpose. Give you an opportunity to. Yeah. Well, good job, well done. Once again, it's a building that has evolved. Great building, great site, great organization. And you can see that the site has changed there, just even with like the bridge as well. Next slide, please.
Oh, yeah, well.
And then up on Federal Street, you have the benefit of historic photos like this one. There's show the evolution of the building. You can see that between now and when the historic picture was taken, there was that outbuilding. There was also considerable more structures off to the left. If I'm looking at the right, that might even be the right view. But then Hope Street was another one. Great, couldn't get much closer to the street right there. And as you can see, it's always been right there next to the street. Another great site. Next slide, please. Things like the powerhouse. You can go between the 1902 picture on the top and 1948 picture and see that that building just completely changed. And it's thanks to sometimes those changes. In the case of the powerhouse, there's actually a lot of historic photos. I think there was a history of power in Greenfield. I can't remember what the source was, but really had some pictures of this structure. But if you didn't really have the 1902 map, you could easily just assume that the present building was there the whole time, but it definitely got a change. Probably a totally different building. I don't know any evidence of the original one. And then if you can see, this is Sanderson Street, just going from left to right and then down, you can see how that complex just took on. The evolution is quite fascinating, just looking at how it evolved and all the infill and new structures. Enough to, you could go in deeper on the history of that in terms of documenting every single aspect. In the case of this building, I did a building form. Now there's building forms and area forms. Most of the projects here, not almost all of them, were buildings. This one was an area form. I think I had 2 area forms. And in this case, even though that looks like a lot more buildings, it really just came down to 3 sort of succinct block of buildings. But as you can see from these maps, there's a lot of additions and other parts of the structures that serve different purposes of for the manufacturing going on there. Next slide, please. And then also the availability of blueprints. This is blueprints for the same site, showing the new addition that went on the top right corner of the main block. Next slide. And then Hope Street. That was the 3rd aspect of this project. There was a 4th aspect. It was documenting African-American sites in Greenfield. We started off doing it. I had information giving addresses of African Americans in Greenfield. But discovered through the research that because of, we had actual street addresses, 24 Hope Street or something like that, but street addresses change over time. So I couldn't positively say that this was the house that they lived in because the houses changed street numbers. In a lot of cases, they were not the owner, so they weren't on the deeds. So it was a case of tenants. So that aspect of it does require a little more information to do like a full sort of deep dive into African-American houses in Greenfield. Having said that, I was able to find some of the houses that they lived in during my Hope Street analysis. And so it was I noted those facts in the building forms.
I don't believe there was ever a black section of town anyway. There
Right.
was an Irish section of town, but not a black section.
Where was the Irish section?
Cheapside, in that same area down farther south.
And so in the case of Heaps, the bird's eye in the previous slide showed sort of sporadic housing, but by 1948, you can get a sense, so you can see sort of the north end was a little more dense, but as you move down to the left, south, there's less housing, but still pretty significant in 1877. Next slide. And then 1948, different orientation. Apologize for that, but you can still get the sense of just it becomes a much denser street. Next slide, please. And just some of the houses that were documented on there. The Lutheran Church is pretty cool. And then during the preliminary research, this was not identified initially, but as I did a windshield survey and was looking for buildings to get to the 140 resources that I was to do, I identified Water Street, Meridian Street as a potential site. I chose it just because of sort of the unit there, especially Water Street, just sort of this one dead end street with a series of homes, kind of standing alone out there in the middle of nowhere, and also very close proximity to the mill that used to be.
Yeah, that's where the smoke's coming from.
Right, good point. Yeah. So my initial thought when I first jumped into this is like, well, this may be sponsored housing. This could be workers' housing built by the mill. I didn't really I found that the mill owned the land at some point and then dispersed it, but there wasn't any evidence that the mill like built a series of buildings.
They weren't top cookie cutter houses. They were all different.
Yeah, exactly. All very different, but still captured those structures. There's 1895 map, the mill in the very bottom right corner, but showing some of the residents. Fitzgeralds were prominent on that street. Some of your Irish people may have moved over there. 1918 showing a little more development. Next slide. And some of the houses on Water Street and a little bit of Meridian. The Meridian, okay. So recommendations, I did some National Register recommendations based on my initial research. Team building, not only all the buildings that I do recommend or will have significance under criterion A for its contribution to Greenfield's industrial history. And then in some cases, also the architecture of the structures themselves. The Toiletine building is this sort of Tudor revival, stickwork type of look that I don't think there's any other in Greenfield, and maybe there are, but
Well, there is a house on
Yeah.
High Street, but yeah.
very not a massively represented style in New England, really.
Right.
So very cool. And then over on Arch Street, the tap and die structure, just showing some of the the maps that I used.
So you recommend it to be put on the National Register, even though it's really been quite.
All potential, I'm not saying they are slam dunks. I'm just saying maybe you'd want to look at these as potential. I mean, they all definitely warrant MHC agreeing, they want a concurrence from them. And yes, you know, in the toiletine building, it has replacement windows. This building, there's definitely the covering up of the windows, and there, a lot of cases you do have unsympathetic additions. So those do impact the integrity of the buildings. But having said that, if there was a tax credit project down the road, these would all be great candidates for somebody to invest in the buildings and take advantage of the tax credits and bring, some cases, bring the buildings back to some state of better integrity. And that was kind of my thought process in these, because there are, I mean, the tax credit projects are used so much on industrial buildings, reuse of industrial buildings. This building, on the other hand, doesn't have really any questions of its historic integrity. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And has a great history. Another build, you know, this building's fine and has already been tastefully redone. Some of the associated buildings on Hope Street have been altered significantly. Once again, just worth taking a look at. Sanderson Street, Greenfield Tap and Die. Great building. The building on the far right's a fantastic building. Federal Street had served two purposes, sort of the main block, one silversmith factory, and then the second one was the Maury and Son. Does have a lot of additions on the Federal Street side, so definitely warrants additional research that determine whether all those that work on the Federal Street side, especially that sort of long atrium type addition, what kind of impact that would have on the integrity. Yeah, so not everyone is a slam dunk obvious one, but just ones to put on the radar. Having said that, so many of the, like, say, like Hope, so many of the residential buildings have been changed so much due to replacement siding and windows and additions that there's really no chance. So this is sort of the best of the lot, let's say. So some other recommendations beyond National Register ones. There's opportunities for the commission to fund similar projects to this one. And we can just go through the slides. I have them sort of highlighted in the next slide. So we, due to the availability of, well, due to the amount of buildings I was hired to do, I didn't get all of Hope Street. And I think it would just be wise just to get all of Hope Street and just sort of just finish that because we ended there. We ended at a certain spot and there's several more buildings. So many sort of residential districts on basically the north side of Greenfield. Definitely would be great to do some additional research on those to see if it was the work of a single developer and just the whole sort of story behind a lot of these houses. Similar size, similar setbacks. Sometimes you have similar architectural style. A lot of times it's different architectural styles, but from the same era, and just great representations of the architecture of that period. Next slide. And a lot of these are sort of the same storyline. Pier Street has a great collection of buildings. Next slide. Upper Meridian Street, collection of houses. North Meadows, these are, part of my recommendations is perhaps same way we did an industrial survey, maybe an agricultural survey at Greenfield. And I didn't go out and take pictures of every single agricultural building. I did do some preliminary research and provided a preliminary list of what I deemed to be architectural buildings based on Google Earth. But it would be a good sort of multiple property survey, sort of capturing the agricultural history, because he's done such a good job with the industrial history. Don't want to leave the agricultural part behind. Potential NR nominations. Once again, this is just not based on a lot of research at all. So you might have some things that pop out in your head right away that say, yeah, no, this is not going to work. So we'll just, Poet Seat Tower, I don't believe it's not on the National Register. But
Oh, yeah, it should be.
yes, I think it's a great one. Next slide, please. Power Square is a great collection of probably work, like, I feel like going back to what you said, same building stock, and the houses are much more cookie cutter in that area. So I think you'd have maybe a storyline that reflects the company's building of the homes, or some little more involvement, and perhaps a higher percentage of workers actually living in the buildings. Great little area there. Up in Highland, I didn't spend too much time up there, but just a great collection of higher end homes.
Boom around 1900, 1890, they
Yeah.
built, when the
All the
town got
industrial.
really a lot
yeah.
of money and built those houses up there.
Yeah, an amazing collection of homes.
Bosses lived up there.
Yeah, and then I feel like middle management lived here. Because it's right around the corner, and houses are sort of right in between. Next slide, please. Factory Hollow. That was part of the original, that was suggested as part of the industrial survey, but there wasn't really a industrial site. But
Tore down.
you do have this collection of capes sort of at the far end of it. Congress Street, if I remember correctly, this is probably a lot larger area than just Congress Street. But just so many, generally speaking, my first impression when I came to this town was like, wow, there's a lot of great residential historic districts here, and to sort of figure out boundaries and try to sort of parse it out in terms of a logical way to do it from a survey point of view and from a narrative point of view. To see,
There's a book,
phase it out.
Encyclopedia of American Architecture. And if you look in that book, you can find an example of almost everything in there in Greenfield.
I can believe it.
Everything from Egyptian revival to whatever, to Frank Lloyd Wright, copycats, everything.
Yeah, it's great. This is
Hey,
the-
I can see Aaron's getting
All
a
right.
little nudgy.
Library, all right.
Keep going.
No, it's.
Strawbridge Lane, I know nothing about these houses.
Oh, I
Yeah.
just-
They,
I know.
Town owns that now.
I mean, I don't know. That's the only view I have of that house. Some thematic studies. I suggest looking at some early 20th century housing developments like those that I've already pointed out. Agricultural corridors and properties, another thing to look at, and then further delving deeper into the Black Studies study aspect of the project. Next slide, please. These are some of the farmsteads. Next slide, please. More farmsteads. And then neighborhood studies. I've already kind of discussed this, but there's some target areas that you could look into deeper. Next slide, please. High Street. Love High Street for the simple reason that a certain section of High Street, as you can see on the left map, the houses are angled, or the street's angled to the house. It's just the layout caught my attention right away, how they're perfectly sort of laid out at an angle going up the road. And they have these just sort of not a square front yard, but sort of a trapezoidal one, or, you know, interesting, but had caught my eye and love to know more about that. Riddell Street, you can keep on going. These are sort of same storyline. Chestnut Street. And then post-war residential neighborhoods, much to some people's chagrin, these are now historic houses that need to be documented. And,
Oh, Brian.
1975.
You think it's lovely? It's
all right, sounds like I. Oak Hill Acres, like, once again, I don't know everything about in terms of integrity of these places and the exact construction dates, things like that, but you have a lot of them. And is that my last slide? That's it. So you told me to hurry up and I hurried up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, because we have another
Yeah, all right.
presentation, yeah. And
Any-
Brian, if there was a I don't know, maybe the Historical Society would want to bring you back or something. I mean, it wouldn't be a part of your consultancy, but
Yeah.
I think it's just really great.
That would be-
Yeah, an
Yeah.
hour-long version of this for the historical.
Yeah.
I could focus on 1975 building. Yeah, something I can do is there a am I done? Or you have questions or?
No, I think we're
All
all
right.
just so thrilled that you
All right.
applied for this job, you got it, and you did such a great job.
And
So,
well, you have a lot more that you can do.
yeah.
Which is
I know.
good.
Do we go to the back of the line for MHC and just wait until?
I haven't worked
Start
there in a lot of
turning in?
years. I think they look at it geographically, like they
Oh.
want to
Uh,
represent the state well. And it's just like whoever.
And we
if
need a
it's a good
copay too.
application.
You know, it's-
Yeah.
It's a matching grant
That's right.
situation, so. Okay, well,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Brian. That was fabulous.
Great job.
Thank
All
you,
right.
thank you.
Okay, and without further ado, let's hear from Connecticut River Conservancy, and I'm really sorry that you've had to wait so long.
It's fine.
Not very fair.
Said 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I like that.
I was, I think.
Margot, I'm just talking to you.
Yes, Athena, yeah,
Good.
I think she's good.
okay.
Good, okay.
Katie, Brian. And also the Greenfield Historical Commission for all your work on this. And also I'd like to appreciate Massachusetts Historical Commission for their grant.
Yeah,
And yes, we will
Very
apply
much.
again.
good. Hey, Athena.
Thanks, Athena.
Okay, so we had heard from Connecticut River in November about the Wiley Russell Dam and the Mill Street Dam, and we had some questions. So you're back to hopefully answer our questions and possibly have us express a different
do
opinion than the last time.
I'm Alex Harrell. I live in Hastings Street in Greenfield. I'm working with the Connecticut Rivers Conservancy as a consultant. I'm a fish biologist by trade, but have gotten dabbling into engineering and restoration and other projects. I will acknowledge that Rebecca Todd is here, who's director for CRC. So if you have any quick questions for her, she can answer those. I did have a presentation. I don't know if it's shareable. I've got it on a thumb drive here if we want to load it up.
Right. What have I
How
got?
much time?
We can't do it on any municipal computers for the thumb drive.
Okay, well, I don't know. I sent it.
Yeah,
I
you
sent
did
on
send it to Eric,
every-
right?
Well, to you, to Eric, to everybody who was on the last thread.
I think I might have it, but
Okay, all
let me see.
right. Well, while they're pulling that up, I'm going to pass these around. The first one is basically just a quick brochure about the project, a little bit more detail than we gave last time. And then the second one that I'm passing around is pretty much a list of answers to all of your questions, or at least most of your questions that we had last. There was a little bit of confusion about the project and what it's about and what it's actually going to be done. Part of that was from reporting in the reporter. So I want to set the record straight. You can read through all those at your leisure. I've also given them to the recorder so they can get it straight next time too. So without my PowerPoint, I can do it without it, but it'd be great if I had it. I've only got a few minutes, so there it is. Great.
Trying to get it bigger. Sorry.
Yeah. If you just go to slideshow, that should.
Yeah,
There we go.
Okay, great.
fabulous.
So
Thank you, Aaron.
we have a project moving forward here. There's an MOA now signed between the city of Greenfield and CRC. And we've had a sort of a perfect storm of deteriorating dams, now support from the city because of the state of the dams, and now some funding opportunities that all really push us toward dam removal as a solution to this problem. We've also got support now from some of the resource agencies, the tribes, and some NGOs who've long supported this project in the past. It's aligned with river and fish restoration, but we see it as more than that. That's why we're here today, because we know participation by our historic commission is critical for this. So next, please. What we're looking for, at least in the near term, is a letter of support for a funding proposal. We're looking to get some funding on this to the tune of about $5 million. That's what it's going to take to do all this. And having letters of support is critical to those proposals. We really need people saying, yes, this is a good idea. And it shows a lot of confidence in what we are doing. We're also looking for your input. Should we go forward with this dam removal project? There's some decisions that have to be made about how to commemorate the dam, their associated history. There's also some, public input that's going to be part of that process. But we want to be working with the Historic Commission if we move forward with that. Next slide, please. Tim Blagg asked earlier about history, about fisheries on the river. I dug back a little bit, back pretty far. And we did meet with some of the tribal members about a month or so ago, and they gave us some feedback about what they knew. So next slide.
So
And
they dammed it up then?
well, kind of,
Yeah,
for a while.
fish trap.
So there is now, at least that's been reported to us by the tribes, that there's evidence of an indigenous fish weir in the Green River that was basically made visible by the flooding that happened after the pumping station dam failure in 2011. And they recovered some indigenous artifacts that were pretty much, telling that this was actually a fish weir. Next.
Where was
And
it?
that's- Yeah, where is that?
I'm kind of reluctant to say that because they have entrusted us with this information. You could ask them.
The tribes are very cautious about sharing locations of some.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Unfortunately, there are people who intentionally try and desecrate tribal sites.
Oh, people look for artifacts.
Yeah.
Big for artifacts.
Yeah.
So, but
Inappropriately.
they also told us that there probably were other fishing sites. And there may be evidence of those if somebody dug back far enough into some land transfers, deeds. There may be some language in there that basically indicates that so-and-so sold their property, which had a native fishing weir on it. It could be there. Next, please. And those sites may have been exactly where the Mill Street Dam and Wiley Russell Dam are now because there's ledge there. And ledge makes a good sort of choke point in the river where it's much easier to fish at. And so that's kind of partially their reasoning for that. Next, please. So again, this all comes from these folks that we talked to, Joe Graveline, David Brule, and Rich Holsick of these indigenous groups. Next, please. They're not uncommon. This is one that's on the Schwalet River in Swansea, New Hampshire. It's been documented. It's been archaeologically investigated. And this is far upriver. A lot of people say, oh, fishing weirs, they got to be down near the coast. Not necessarily so. If there were fish in the rivers, people fished for them. This is all that may remain for them. Next, please. In terms of post-contact, what we would think of as historic fisheries, there's not much evidence. Next slide. Next, yeah. There's virtually no documentation of any commercial fisheries except for up at Turner's Falls, at the Great Falls there. That was a biggie in terms of the commercial fishing site. On the Green River, less so. But again, at least about the time the dams were being built, people would build weirs usually on top of Native American sites and basically try to exploit them. Like this is an eel weir in Maine that was done, same thing, was built on a Native American site. Next, please. There may have been artisanal fisheries for local consumption. Those aren't really documented very well. Next, please. But there's, again, may still be some records. I found kind of one. Go next one, please. This is in the Thompson's History of Greenfield, and there's an excerpt here about a salmon trying to leap over a dam, which is probably a dam at the site of the Wiley Russell Dam at one point. And being a salmon, it took him a while to get over it. But these sorts of things do exist, but you have to dig deep for them. They may be in newspaper articles, things like that, which are a little bit harder to search. Next, please. And then there are a few historical records from the 1800s and mid 1900s, just basically talking about fishing in the Green River. And most accounts have said that it was pretty good, mostly for trout, things that people took home and ate. But there's anecdotal evidence that people fished it. Next, please. It's still quite a good recreational fishery. It's a cold water fish resource, which we have mostly here in Western Mass. And it's been stocked with trout since the mid 1900s by both Massachusetts and Vermont. So people fish it. It's very high water quality. There's a lot of fishing that goes on. I haven't seen too much down in Greenfield, but I've seen a few folks, including myself.
Upper reaches there?
Upper reaches are the
Fishing for brookies?
brook trout,
Yeah.
rainbow trout.
Before
Huron
the
trout.
covered bridge, before the dam there?
No, below the reservoir.
Yeah, there's trout all throughout the river.
Oh.
Next, please.
That size?
Yeah, well, that's a big one. I mean, when you think of brook trout, that's a big one. But the current state of the dams, I want to talk about this a little bit because if we're thinking restoration, there are definitely some challenges. The Wiley Russell, there's not much left. And this is a picture I took this fall where you can actually see in behind where the concrete was poured in 1938. And most of the crib work is rotted out, timber cribs rotted
How
out.
did you take that picture?
I waded in the river and took a picture of it.
Because there was drought conditions?
Well, it was very low flow. You remember we
Yeah,
had very
yeah,
dry
right.
flow. So now
Yeah.
you can actually see under the dam.
Wow.
The stonework is gone. There's not
Yeah.
much of the timber crib work. It's mostly concrete. It's been now rated as poor condition in the most recent safety inspection, which is a big concern for the city. And it's going to cost 500 to 900K just to stabilize the structure. That's without restoring to whatever one would want to restore it to. So big cost. And then once you do restore it, you got to maintain it. And that's also a big cost, especially if you're talking about any kind of timber crib structure. That maintenance costs for those are much, much higher than a conventional concrete dam. Next, please. The Mill Street or Electric Light and Power Dam, it's rated as fair condition, but as we all know, there was some recent issues. There's been a void created under the concrete dam that had to be patched up at great expense to the city. And there are additional deficiencies that have to be rectified at some point. And to fix those, 0.8 to 1.3 million to just repair it. Our goal, at least for this dam, Wiley Russell, it would come completely out. Greenfield Electric Light and Power Dam, we wouldn't remove it totally, but we would lower the crest about 6.5 feet. And then you put downstream of the crest, sort of a rock ramp, a ramp of boulders or whatever to create more of what's called a boulder riffle. And once you do that, if you achieve the goals you want to, it becomes non-jurisdictional, which means you don't have any more maintenance responsibility. So the city likes that because now they don't have a dam anymore. There's reasons for doing that. I won't get into those. It's too technical at this point. But part of that boulder riffle could also benefit places like Museum of Our Industrial Heritage in that the reconstruction could basically support the bank erosion there to try to offset the bank erosion that the museum's encountering now. And it's also an opportunity to maybe get at some artifacts that we know are in the bank itself, that were just kind of cast off and thrown in the river. There are artifacts back in that bank that could be excavated, it could be saved for whatever purpose in the future.
Jim? Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Well, we actually have a time problem here.
Yep.
I know
I'm
that,
almost done.
yeah. Can you finish?
Yes, he can finish.
Okay.
I just told Eric, they're
But-
gonna wait to start the next meeting.
Okay, great.
So next,
We got you an extra 5.
so next slide, please. So questions about if the dams are removed, how can they be commemorated? We talked about kiosks. You've told us that a plaque is not enough. We agree. And there's a lot more that can be done. And you're really only limited by your imagination. Some of the ideas, artifacts to be displayed either at the sites or as part of the Museum of our Industrial Heritage. One idea would be to reconstruct the dam in the dry somewhere to be determined. That could become a kiosk. That could be an educational tool. Whether there's enough original timbers left to do that from the original dam, who knows? But there's no reason why one couldn't reconstruct it out of new timbers and use the same construction techniques. It would be a great educational tool to show people how these things were actually built, which really is pretty incredible, given that what they endured for many, many years. So next, please. So finally, we're on a short fuse here. Our proposal for this funding is due February 10th. We won't know until we get the funding for 3 to 6 months. But the good part is we wouldn't start anything on the project until a year from now. So that gives us time to plan, to converse with you guys, to talk about what parts would we want to commemorate if the dams came out. And we can also go after other funding. If this funding cycle doesn't pay for everything, there's some historical commemoration that needs to be done. We can talk about that, write a grant.
Can you
Certainly
tell
can be
us
done.
what NOAA means?
That's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration bipartisan infrastructure law. That's a chunk of infrastructure money
Okay.
that's available. So we can get quite a bit. We're targeting right now about 5 to 6 million. That's our goal. What we're asking for from the commission is a letter of support. Now, I know that you will want to deliberate over something like this before you make any kind of decision. I didn't expect any kind of an answer today.
Otherwise, we could do it would be the next meeting.
That's
Yeah.
right. And
We could do it then.
yeah,
Could do it the next
No,
meeting.
I mean, you could make a motion to,
No, we'll talk about it at the next meeting.
Well,
well,
can make-
you could make a motion to vote. Do you want to write a letter of support or vote to table until the next meeting? So you could.
Well, we don't have to take action at all, right? He just. made a
No, but somebody could.
presentation.
I'm just saying somebody could.
Right.
that's.
I don't
that's
have
up to
any
you.
problem
Yeah.
either way, but I'm just,
I would,
not
You
necessary.
know, I think it would be,
Put it on,
I'm a big fan of the project. I think everybody knows that.
Right.
And I think,
no, we're not,
well,
in general.
some.
we need to
In general.
discuss it more.
But I
So,
do know that the proposals due right after the next meeting.
Yes,
So.
yes. So we could, depending on the deliberation, we'll take action immediately for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
It would be very, very
absolutely.
helpful
We
for
could-
us.
We could do it if we're gonna do it, we can do it at the next meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've been told by the funders is, the show of support from Historical
Right.
Commission in these cases is huge. It really helps.
Well, we certainly will talk about it at the next meeting. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that. It'll be on the agenda.
Can I entertain a motion to move it to the deliberation?
Put it on
to
the
next
agenda for
meeting?
the next meeting.
Yeah.
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 Sure.
All those in favor?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, great.
Okay. Can I ask you to consider something while you're thinking about this?
Sure.
The area on the Green River from the Wiley Russell Dam and the parking lot there across from the arbors on up to the present place of the power company up at the other bridge. All along that right-hand side of the river, along the eastern side of the river, there's a road that's discontinued along there for
Right.
part of it. And then the rest of it is overgrown on that bank. That would make a section of the Green River if you guys would throw your weight behind that, that could be used for picnicking, it could be used for looking at the river, it could be really developed in a way that's been considered by the charrette that was held. A number of different, there's maps, there's all kinds of information, and nobody has ever pulled the lever on that deal. And if you guys were to throw your weight behind something like that, then that would make a lot of difference. And the head of it could be this information about the dam.
There has already been conversation about also working with Christie at Parks about something just like that. We've already talked about it.
I understand, and I'm just trying to get these guys to throw their weight behind it.
Connecticut
Because-
River Conservancy is 100% behind public access on the Green.
I understand that, but the fact is that I've lived in this town for 35 years. And for 30 years, people have been talking about doing stuff on the Green River. And to this point, nothing has ever been,
Well, let's
let's try and change that.
nothing has ever been done. So if the city was to do something and you guys would do something, I'd be absolutely over the moon.
Listen, we got a Starbucks if anybody ever thought that would happen.
That's a step backwards.
Wait, well, we're trying to talk about something that's good for the town.
Yeah, come on.
Yes, Rebecca, yeah.
There may be other questions that come up. Alex and I are happy to come back and chat with you, or if questions come up.
You can filter them through me. I can set up a group chat and we can do it like that as well.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah, because
And I hate to rush everyone, but I
I
am,
think the we've got enough information.
No, hold on.
Jim,
Can I just make one comment?
yeah.
we are, make it fast.
I'm Jim Terrapin, I own president of the.
Yes.
I own that building there.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that you're taking the historical aspects seriously. My concern is, that place is not only the museums, it's a place of business. We have 10 tenants there that make their living there, come there every day. I just went to a little horror show with that dam repair because they basically commandeered her parking lot and disrupted business for several days. I was happy to help, but it was kind of out of nowhere. I can't let that happen. And so, I mean, have you been anywhere in the process where you've looked at how logistically, how you're actually gonna get in there and do these things?
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
But this is why we have conversations with you at this point in time.
Yeah.
We got to get the money first,
Yeah.
then we talk about how to do it.
Then we do the engineering and then we figure out access.
There's a
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We
So
didn't
moved.
get our whole agenda covered.
So,
But we'll transfer those
So
items
moved.
to the new. Second?
okay, all in favor?
Okay. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, everyone.